So what do we do if we're going to be creating original fiction and fantasy with this medium? Do we junk it and say, you know what, historically it did a thing. Now what are we going to do? Are we obliged to change our mechanics? I mean, some of us just avoid it. I avoid it. I just don't go there with all these different races to pick from as character types in my designs. Other people have done the same. Others have said, you know what, we're going to embrace it. We're going to go all the way with it, with our, our snake people race and our, mostly with aliens and science fiction, but sometimes in fantasy. We're going to go all the way with it, and we're going to give it geopolitics. I was thinking of Jerry Grayson's games, both the ancient one, the sword and sorcery one, which is Atlantis, and the science fiction one, which is Hellas, which is, basically ancient Greeks in space. And in both of them, you do have all these different character races, but he aims at that same kind of geopolitics of it all, so that you are embedded in historical political conflict by what you choose to play. Is that, I mean, I have no solution like what the right thing to do is, but I do know that it's very dangerous. You can slip into supremacism real easy.
Right.
You can have your butt monkey race, your group that, the comedy relief race. You can have your, big, reliable, prone to rage, trying to get along in real society guy. Even though we all know you have trouble, poor fellow, controlling yourself. You can slip into caricatures. You can slip into this notion that there is a kind of default center who's, as you say, no more smart, no more intelligent than anyone else, except that they're better at everything. Except that they're more insightful, more adaptable, more inventive, more expand. They expand more. Other races, they've got their ancient technologies and everything, but we made our own. You can slip into all that stuff really, really easily. I'm certain that the authors of World Tree did not think of themselves as bigots. But I read it again. I said, am I crazy? And I read it again, and I was like, oh no, I'm not crazy. Somebody write a dissertation quick. We need a chapter on this one. So when it comes to mind, what is it that you like? If you were to play a game with this stuff, I find myself itching to play Apocrypha again, which is probably obvious. But you'll notice I'm interested in playing one or two of the groups, not all 11 of them, or 12, or how many of them there are. What comes to mind? What games are you either playing or interested in playing that do this?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about specific games. Certainly, right now we're involved in Dark Earth, and it has, some I think very kind of intriguing and provocative things that are kind of going on with respect to how races are conceived. And it also just strikes me that in terms of my own gameplay, that I think that when other races like goblins, orcs, ogres, what have you, are entering into the scenarios, I think that they are being treated somewhat differently than they were when I was first starting to play the role-playing games, right? You go to like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and the orcs are chaotic evil, and it has them tied into this whole alignment system.
And so without kind of
yes, yes,
it's actually pretty explicit. They are fecund. They're always at it, and they're always making more little orcs, the bastards, Right.
And you know, the way, you know, at least when I was initially playing the games and reading the books, there wasn't at least initially very much kind of behind the orcs that I saw, right? And so they were kind of the chaotic evil ones, and we were lawful good, and so it was just kind of without thinking, right, that they were the enemies. But now I think that they even if they are still monstrous, they are also uh, non-player characters on some level as well, right? That you get a much greater sense that, okay, we may not fully understand what their motives are, but they do seem to have some motives, and there's something kind of behind what they are doing, and
I think it
it's
depends a lot on
cultural.
the different iterations of the game, but I do agree that shows up. And the half orc has clearly, we talked about this in Half Breed, the half orc has clearly undergone a really remarkable set of strange changes, so that they're quite sinister in the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, for example, and they are, you know, misunderstood now, or they're just basically big and rough and tough, and we like our big and rough and tough guy. Um, but I see that, and so still though, does any like title come to mind that I mean that strikes you as something you'll pick up because it's interesting in this way? I mean, I find myself again looking at a couple of titles and going, wow, I'd kind of been shying away from all these enormous number of race games for quite a while, but now I'm kind of tempted to do it and see what I make of it, see why I do, you know, why or what I get out of it.
I guess another variety of game that I am interested in would be kind of the games where you are explicitly supposed to play one of these non-human groups. So somewhat, is it Orc World that?
Orc World, you're playing an orc and you're all in the same tribe.
Correct.
It's given.
I have played a game called No Country for Old Kobolds,
Right.
where you play a kobold, and that, you know, the other players are kind of kobolds, kind of passing on your lineage. I think another game, and I haven't played it yet, but it's kind of I think it's in that same category, would be The Clay That Woke, where you are playing the minotaurs that are.
This is a topic that's almost the opposite of the topic for this seminar, which is to have this huge spray of options. Whereas now we're talking sort of the Troll Babe thing, or in some games where you're just playing people, period. Like Bushido, right? I mean, you're just playing somebody in this kind of fantasy Japan, and that's what you play. And the same goes for Troll Babe, the same whether it's human or not. And certainly The Clay That Woke, and there's probably a lot of others now that I think about it, where you may have slight differences in what you do or what kind of background you have or things, but you are, you know, this group, even if it is in a fantasy setting with a broader set of options. The Minotaurs in Clay That Woke are particularly focused in this regard. They're not just a fantasy race among many. But Herman, any of these of your vast library of games, can you think of one that has an especially broad range of character options that strikes you as interesting to play?
Well, it's not quite what I'm looking at to playing at the moment, I think. So
I feel the same way. That's why it's weird to kind of think across that as a
why I was so silent and thinking, well, I mean, I'm playing Traveler, but we're playing. I'm game mastering a group of humans, and it's a long campaign. So the way it's going, we'll be playing that same group of humans for the next couple of years if it's
right.
Goes as glacially slow.
Bangs, Herman, bangs. Put in some bangs.
Oh yeah, but it's just getting the group together is the problem. More than if we play it moves quite finely. But no, I'm not looking at one of those games and saying, yeah, I want to play this one. So no.
Rod, anything?
Well, I don't, not in terms of a particular game that I'm looking at whole cloth, but one thing that I've thought about in the past couple of years is changing. Well, something I thought of specifically with Tunnels and Trolls was changing the default selection of races to harder to non-humanity. Weird, like, let's play Tunnels and Trolls with integrity. What? No.
Right.
What I puttered around, well, this eventually developed into something that I might carry into RuneQuest hacks or something like that. I puttered around, I looked at the races and thought, no, let's change it up and not change the stats. I first started, I changed brownies to macaques, like the monkeys, the actual, ones that, have red skin and white hair, and changed pixies to cockatoos.
That's
birds,
really interesting.
You're actually a bird. And then the cockatoo thing has become a weird obsession, and I sort of have some notes on a RuneQuest setting where cockatoos would be a playable race, and they're sort of integrated in human religious practice in a weird way, relating to.
That's not weird at all, actually. I mean, one of the original bits of RuneQuest were the tribal baboons.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And every time I've sat around with Glorantha and any one of us has thought of it, sometimes it's me, sometimes someone else, they say, why don't we just play all baboons? and everybody always goes, yeah, we got to do that.
Yeah, that is cool.
And we never get around to it. I mean, it's that in one of the first religion packs in Cults of Prax, they've actually got the god who is worshipped by many tribal humans. He's the original death god, ancestral spirit and death god. And the baboons worship, and he is the god of the baboons. And so there's your cult right there. There's your primary baboon cult right there to be done. And that's what you need for RuneQuest, right? You need your cults. And so as soon as you say, hey, let's play baboons, everybody knows that it's there to be done. There's no mechanic stopping you.
As a footnote to that, are you aware of the construal in some materials of hobgoblins in AD&D as mandrill people or baboon people?
It's the strangest thing in AD&D for some reason, and it's not in the early game, the early game, but in the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual, for some reason they just make them Asian. They're all wearing Chinese or Japanese armor.
Right.
And that suddenly crops up kind of out of nowhere. And then, yes, later versions, I don't know when, but later versions, they make them they have like the facial structure and stuff. Yeah.
So if you look at the official Advanced Dungeons and Dragons coloring book, which is an unusual, an odd product that's actually online, I think I'll post a link to it in Discord for reference. But it was illustrated by Greg Irons, who was an old Underground Comics guy from San Francisco. It's kind of an interesting rabbit hole to go down. But he apparently, working from Gary Gygax's prose descriptions of these different characters, where he would illustrate sort of a lurid, extremely verbose prose. Here, kid, have a coloring book. Like, wow. Mm-hmm. He drew the hobgoblins as mandrill people,
so
and I
believe where it came from, huh? Because I remember seeing that in later work and kind of going, "That's weird." Where'd that come from?
That's 1978, and the AD&D Monster Manual doesn't specifically reference baboons, but it does mention that hobgoblins have blue noses.
I do remember the blue noses. Yes,
noses. So there may have been some sort of
wow. That coloring book is going to have to be. We're going to have to go there real soon. That's for sure. I think all of us. So I had no idea. Whew. Okay, guys, I think that's it for tonight. Thanks for going around the mulberry bush with me on this one. It's not an easy topic. We'll see if we can prompt some further discussion down the line from others. So, all right, have fun, and I'll see you later.
Have a good evening.